Human joked he'd marry the little alien girl when she grew up. Years later she returned to Commander Derek Fry, wiped the sweat from his brow as he tightened the final bolt on the cruiser's damaged thruster assembly. The hangar of Outpost Epsilon 9 was sweltering even with the environmental systems running at full capacity after 12 hours of non-stop work. His muscles ached beneath his heavy gray armor, now strewn with engine grease and coolant that should do it, he muttered to himself, stepping back to admire his handiwork. The repairs weren't pretty, but they'd hold. As the chief engineer and pilot for the human expeditionary force on Lumria, he'd learned to make do with limited resources. Lumria was humanity's first real diplomatic success story since joining the Galactic Confederation. The Lumrians, a humanoid species with delicate lavender skin and remarkable technological prowess, had welcomed the human delegation with open arms. Unlike other alien races that viewed humans with suspicion or outright hostility, the Lumrians seemed genuinely fascinated by Earth culture. Derek packed his tools into their case, his thoughts drifting to the upcoming departure. 3 months on this beautiful world had been enough to make him consider extending his tour, but orders were orders. The brass wanted him back at Arcturus Station by the end of the month. Excuse me, sir. The voice was so soft that dear Rick almost missed it. He turned to find a small Lumrian child standing at the edge of the hangar bay, her large violet eyes fixed on him with unmistakable curiosity. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 by human standards, with silvery hair that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. Well, hello there, Derek said, setting down his tools and kneeling to meet her at eye level. You're not supposed to be in here, little one. It's dangerous. I wanted to see the human ship, she replied, her translator rendering her melodic language into perfect English. Father says humans build machines differently than we do. Derek smiled. Your father is right. We tend to favor function over form, though this old bird has plenty of both. He gestured to the cruiser behind him. The little girl took a tentative step forward, her eyes never leaving Derek. You're different from the other humans who visit. You work with your hands. The others just talk. He chuckled. Someone's got to keep the ships flying while the diplomats do their talking. She nodded solemnly as if he'd imparted some profound wisdom. Then, with a directness only a child could muster, she declared, when I grow up I want my husband to be a human man just like you. The statement caught Derek off guard and he laughed despite himself. Is that so? Well, when you grow into a beautiful woman I promise I'll marry you. The words tumbled out playfully, the kind of harmless joke an adult might make to humor a child's innocent declaration. Her face lit up with delight and she nodded enthusiastically. I am Hooray. What's your name? Commander Derek Fry, at your service, he replied with a mock salute. Commander Derek Fry, she repeated carefully as if committing it to memory. I'll remember. A voice called from outside the hangar, someone looking for the girl. Tyr glanced over her shoulder nervously. I have to go, she said, but I'll find you when I'm grown up, I promise. Before Derek could respond, she darted away, disappearing through the hangar doors as quickly as she'd appeared. He shook his head, smiling at the encounter. Kids were the same across the galaxy, full of imagination and impossible dreams. He had no idea how seriously his words would be taken. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. The alliance between Earth and Lumria flourished, leading to unprecedented technological advancement for humanity and cultural enrichment for the Lumrians. Derek had risen through the ranks, eventually taking command of the permanent human outpost on Leia at 42. He was still in his prime, regular exercise and advanced medical treatments ensuring his physique remained as impressive as it had been a decade earlier. The morning began like any other. Dear Rick arrived at the hangar early, reviewing maintenance logs before the day shift arrived. The quiet solitude of the early hours was his favorite part of the day, just him and the machines. Commander Fry. The voice was melodic and confident with just a hint of the translator's synthetic undertone. Derek turned and his breath caught in his throat. Standing in the hangar entrance was a stunning Lumrian woman. Her snow-white hair cascaded down her back, contrasting beautifully with her light lavender skin. She wore a form-fitting white dress with a plunging neckline that accentuated her sculpted figure, bare arms and legs adding to her ethereal beauty. But it was her eyes, large, violet and intensely focused on him, that triggered a distant memory. Do I know you? He asked, setting down his datapad. She stepped forward, moving with graceful purpose. You promised to marry me when I grew up. A smile played at the corners of her mouth. I'm grown now. You promised to marry me and I've come so you can keep your word. Derek froze, his mind racing to place her. Then it hit him, the little girl from the hangar a decade ago. A playful comment made to humor a child now returned as a binding oath to Lyra. He managed his voice barely above a whisper. Her smile widened. You remember Good dear. Rick ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the right words. Look, Tira, that was I was just making a promise she finished for him on my world. Promises are sacred bonds, Commander, especially those made to children. She moved closer, her violet eyes never leaving his. I've spent years preparing for this day, learning your customs, studying your language without translators, even adapting my diet to be compatible with yours. That's dedicated, Derek said, backing up until he felt the workbench behind him. But surely you understand I wasn't being serious. Oh, I understand human humor better than most Lumrians, Tira replied, stopping just short of invading his personal space. But I also understand human honor, and a man like you, a commander, a leader, surely values his word, doesn't he? Derek swallowed hard. This was beyond awkward. It was potentially a diplomatic incident in the making, yet something about her confidence, her directness, stirred something unexpected within him. Tora, the hangar doors slid open and Lieutenant Parker strode in, stopping short at the sight of them. Commander, the Lumrian High Council is requesting your presence. Something about a marriage proposal, dear. Rick closed his eyes briefly. Of course. Their taller smile turned triumphant. Shall we go together, future husband? I believe we have much to discuss with the council. As she turned toward the door, dear. Rick caught Lieutenant Parker's bewildered expression. He could only offer a helpless shrug in return. Somehow a careless promise made to a child had just become the most complicated diplomatic situation of his career, and possibly the most life-altering. After you, he said, gesturing toward the door as Tarara walked ahead. Dear. Rick couldn't help but notice the graceful sway of her hips. This was going to be a very long day. The Lumrian High Council chamber was an architectural marvel, a vast dome of polished blue stone that caught the light of Lumria's twin stars, casting prismatic patterns across the floor. 7 council members sat in a semicircle on elevated seats, their expressions unreadable as Derek entered, with Tira at his side. Commander Fry in tone, High Counselor, there in a distinguished Lumrian with silver streaks in his white hair. We understand there is a matter of some delicacy to discuss, dear. Rick cleared his throat. High Counselor, there seems to be a misunderstanding. When Tira was a child, I made what humans would consider a joke, a promise. Tira interrupted smoothly, one witnessed by me and acknowledged by the commander himself moments ago when he recognized me. The council members exchanged glances. Counselor Mira, the only female among them, leaned forward. Commander Fry, perhaps you are unaware that in our culture promises made to children are considered especially binding. They are viewed as pure intentions untainted by adulterations. With all due respect, Counselor, Derek replied, choosing his words carefully. On Earth, adults often make playful promises to children without the expectation they'll be taken literally. It's a form of endearment. Fascinating, murmured Counselor, therein, yet surely honor transcends cultural boundaries. A man of your position must understand the weight of his words. Derek felt trapped. Rejecting Tira's claim outright would insult Lumrian customs and potentially damage the alliance his people had worked so hard to build, yet accepting it would mean committing to a relationship, possibly even marriage, with a woman he just dreamt. He glanced at Tira, who watched him with those intense violet eyes. There was something captivating about her, a confidence and intelligence that went beyond her striking appearance. Perhaps Counselor Duran, a younger member with progressive views, a compromise is possible. Commander Fry could honor the spirit of his promise through a formal courtship period. This would allow both parties to determine if they are truly compatible. Tira's expression brightened. I find this acceptable, Commander. There. Unprompted, Derek saw his opening. A courtship would buy him time to find a diplomatic solution without causing immediate offense. I would be honored to court Lady Tira in accordance with Lumrian tradition. Excellent, Theron said. Visibly relieved, the traditional period is 3 lunar cycles. During this time, you will participate in several ceremonial events and spend time learning about one another. And at the conclusion, Mira added with a pointed look at Derek, either party may withdraw without dishonor provided there is legitimate incompatibility. Derek nodded, understanding the implicit message. He couldn't simply go through the motions. He would need to demonstrate genuine effort. As they left the council chamber, Tira slipped her arm through his. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through him. You handled that well, she said, her voice carrying a hint of amusement for someone planning to find a way out of his promise. Dear. Rick raised an eyebrow. That transparent am I to me? Yes. Her fingers tightened slightly on his arm. But I'm not concerned. 3 cycles is ample time for you to discover what I already know. And what's that? She stopped, turning to face him fully. Standing close, he noticed flecks of silver in her violet irises like stars in a twilight sky. That we are remarkably compatible. Her voice lowered to an intimate tone that sent a shiver down his spine. Biologically, psychologically, in all the ways that matter. Derek found himself momentarily speechless, caught off guard by her directness and the sudden undeniable attraction he felt. Tira was unlike any woman he'd ever met, human or otherwise. "You seem very confident for someone who barely knows me," he finally managed. "Oh, but I do know you, Derek Fry." The use of his first name felt strangely intimate. "I've studied you for years, your service record, your published papers on cross-species engineering principles, even your interviews with the Confederation Press. That's thorough. I'm nothing if not dedicated." She resumed walking, guiding him down a corridor lined with living plants that seemed to respond to their presence. "Our first courtship ritual is tomorrow evening. The ceremony of intentions. Formal attire is required." "I don't recall agreeing to start so soon," Derek said, though without real objection. Tyra's lips curved into a smile that was both challenging and alluring. "Are you not a man of action, Commander? Why delay what is inevitable?" Before he could respond, they reached the junction where their paths would separate. "She to her family compound, he to the human quarter. Until tomorrow," she said, releasing his arm as she turned to leave. She added over her shoulder, "And Derek, human formal attire suits you exceptionally well. I look forward to seeing you in it." Derek watched her go, admiring the graceful confidence in her stride. He was in dangerous territory, not just diplomatically but personally. For the first time since she'd walked into his hangar that morning, he allowed himself to consider the possibility that this unexpected situation might lead somewhere he hadn't anticipated, and more troublingly, that he might not mind. Derek adjusted the collar of his dress uniform, the polished insignia of the Human Expeditionary Force catching the light from the bioluminescent flowers that lined the path to the Grand Pavilion. The ceremony of intentions was apparently a bigger affair than he'd anticipated, and dignitaries from across Lemuria had gathered to witness the first formal courtship ritual between a human and one of their own. "Nervous, Commander?" Lieutenant Parker fell into step beside him, looking uncomfortable in his own formal attire. "Just wondering what I've gotten myself into," Derek replied, nodding to a group of Lamrian officials who watched him with undisguised curiosity. "Word around the base is that your potential bride isn't just any Lamrian," Parker said, lowering his voice. "Apparently she's High Counselor Theron's niece and heir to the Stellar Crafty Guild. That's one of their most influential institutions." Derek stopped short. "What? Why am I just hearing about this now?" Parker shrugged. "Intelligence just confirmed it. The Guild controls all deep space navigation charts for this sector. They're the reason Lamrian ships can travel routes other species consider too dangerous." "Damn," Derek resumed, walking, his mind racing. "This changed everything. A union with Tira wouldn't just be a personal matter, it would represent a significant political alliance between humanity and one of Lumria's most powerful factions." The Grand Pavilion came into view, its translucent dome pulsing with soft blue light. Hundreds of Lumrians mingled beneath it, their white hair and lavender skin creating a sea of ethereal beauty. At the center stood Tira. Derek's breath caught. She wore a gown that seemed woven from starlight itself, clinging to her curves before flowing to the floor like liquid silver. Her hair was adorned with tiny gems that caught the light with every movement. As if sensing his presence, she turned and their eyes met. Across the crowd a smile curved her lips and she began moving toward him with purpose. "Commander Fry," she greeted, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed reserved for him alone. "You look exactly as I imagined you would. You might have mentioned your political standing," he replied quietly, taking her offered hand. Her skin was warm, softer than he expected. Tyra's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Would it have made a difference?" "It might have." "Then I'm glad I didn't." She drew closer, her scent enveloping him, something like vanilla and exotic spice. "Tonight isn't about politics, it's about intentions." Before he could respond, a chime sounded and the crowd parted to form a circle around them. High Counselor Theron stepped forward, his ceremonial robes shimmering with embedded technology. "Tonight we witness the declaration of intentions between Tyra, then heir of the Stellar Guild, and Commander Derek Fry of Earth Thronon," announced, his voice amplified throughout the pavilion. "This first step on the path to union is sacred among our people." Derek felt hundreds of eyes upon him, the weight of expectation almost palpable. This was no longer just about honoring a promise or navigating alien customs. It was about the future relationship between two species. Theron gestured and an attendant brought forward a shallow bowl filled with luminescent liquid. "The waters of truth will reveal the genuine intentions of both parties, Commander. As the initiator of the promise, you will speak first." Derek hesitated, then dipped his fingers into the cool liquid. To his surprise, it began to glow brighter at his touch, sending ripples of light across the surface. "Speak your intentions toward Tyra," their own instructed. Derek looked into Tira's expectant eyes and found himself speaking from a place of unexpected honesty. "I intend to honor the Spirit of my promise, by approaching this courtship with openness and respect I will learn your ways, share my own, and discover if what lies between us is worthy of the bond you seek. The liquid in the bowl flared brilliantly, casting his face in golden light. A murmur of approval swept through the crowd. Tira stepped forward, her fingers joining his. In the bowl the liquid responded immediately, swirling around their joined hands in patterns of increasing complexity. I intend to show Derek Fry that our meeting was no accident of fate, but a convergence of destiny, she said, her eyes never leaving his. I will prove that what began with a child's admiration has matured into a woman's desire for a partner who embodies the strength, innovation, and honor that I have always seen in him. The liquid between their fingers pulsed with light so intense that dear Rick had to squint. The crowd gasped collectively. The waters have spoken, Theron declared. The intentions are pure and resonant. Let the courtship proceed. As the formal ceremony concluded and music filled the pavilion, Tellera led Derek to a more private alcove overlooking Lumria's capital city. The twin moons cast everything in a surreal glow. The waters of truth, Derek said. Do they actually detect deception? Tara laughed. The sound like music. They respond to electrical patterns. Heightened emotional states cause stronger reactions. Her fingers traced the insignia on his chest. Your response was quite intense. So was yours, he countered, surprised by his own boldness as he captured her wandering hand. What did you mean about our meeting not being an accident? Her expression softened. My father was the chief engineer who worked with your team 10 years ago. He spoke often of the human approach to problems, direct, innovative, sometimes beautifully crude in his efficiency. Her free hand rose to touch his face. When I saw you that day, you embodied everything he admired about your species. The revelation struck Derek deeply. This wasn't just about a child's fancy or political advantage. There was something genuine in her pursuit of him, and now he asked, acutely aware of her closeness, the warmth of her touch. Now I see the man, not just the symbol. Her eyes held his, filled with unmistakable desire. And I find I want both. The distance between them vanished as their lips met, tentative at first, then with growing hunger. Her body pressed against his, fitting perfectly despite their different physiologies. The kiss deepened, and dear Rick felt a connection forming that transcended physical attraction, something primal yet profound. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Tyra's eyes had darkened to deep amethyst. The next ritual isn't scheduled until tomorrow, she whispered against his lips. Perhaps we could continue our cultural exchange in private. Derek knew he stood at a crossroads. What had begun as diplomatic maneuvering had evolved into something far more complex and far more enticing. Lead the way, he said. Dear Rick awoke to the gentle caress of Lemuria's primary sun streaming through the gossamer curtains of Tyra's private chambers. The events of the previous night flooded back. Their passionate encounter had been a revelation, a perfect harmony of human intensity and Lumrian grace. Their bodies had found a natural rhythm despite their different biologies, each discovering unexpected pleasures in the other's touch. Tora slept peacefully beside him, her snow-white hair spread across the pillow, her lavender skin almost luminous in the morning light. Watching her, dear Rick felt something shift within him. What had begun as diplomatic obligation was transforming into genuine affection. His commune buzzed insistently from the floor where his uniform lay discarded. Careful not to wake Tara, he slipped from the bed and retrieved it. Fry here, he answered quietly. Lieutenant Parker's voice came through, tense and urgent. Commander, we have a situation. The Horizon's been sabotaged. 3 crew members injured. 1 critical. Derek's blood ran cold. The Horizon was their newest vessel, a joint human-Lumrian engineering project. Sabotage? Are you certain? The propulsion system was deliberately compromised. Security footage shows a Lumrian accessing the engine room at 0200 hours. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Derek ended the call, turning to find Toller sitting up. The sheet pulled around her, her eyes alert despite having just awakened. Your ship was attacked, she said. Not a question you heard. I didn't need to. She rose from the bed, moving with fluid grace to a console embedded in the wall. The guild monitors all vessels in Lumrian space. The Horizon's emergency systems activated 3 minutes ago. The console displayed a 3-dimensional schematic of the damaged ship, highlighting the affected areas in pulsing red. Derek approached momentarily distracted by the curve of Tira's bare shoulder before focusing on the display. This is more detailed than our own diagnostics, he said, examining the damage pattern. The guild sees everything in our skies. Her fingers danced across the interface. This was no accident. The damage pattern indicates targeted sabotage of the human design components. Someone trying to make it look like human engineering is flawed. Derek suggested, his tactical mind already working through the implications. Or to create discord between our peoples till Lyra turned to face him her. Expression grave. There are factions who oppose our alliance and who would be particularly disturbed by our personal connection. Derek began gathering his clothes and his mind racing. I need to get to the shipyard. I'm coming with you. Tara moved to her wardrobe, selecting a practical jumpsuit rather than her usual elegant attire. As guild error, I have authority to access all technical data that might help identify the saboteur. As they dressed, a new alert chimed from Talora's console. She frowned, reading the message. What is it? Derek asked, noting her concern. We've been summoned to an emergency session of the High Council. Apparently our accelerated courtship has raised concerns. Derek paused in fastening his uniform. Accelerated? We're following the prescribed rituals. Of the rituals? Yes. A hint of color darkened her lavender cheeks. But traditionally physical intimacy occurs after the third ritual, not the first. Dear Rick felt a flush of his own. I wasn't aware of that particular protocol. I was. Her lips curved in a mischievous smile. Despite the serious situation, I chose to ignore it. Rebellious, he noted with appreciation. For the right cause. She approached him, helping to straighten his collar. But now we face scrutiny from both sides. Your Admiral Kensington has requested to join the council session via quantum link. Derek groaned. Perfect. A diplomatic incident in a personal inquisition all before breakfast. Speaking of which, Tara pressed a panel revealing a small cove that produced 2 steaming cups. Turan coffee. I had my kitchen programmed to synthesize it. Derek accepted the cup gratefully, taking a sip of the surprisingly authentic brew. You really did study humans thoroughly, didn't you? I told you I've been preparing for this day for years. Her expression softened. Though I admit the reality of you exceeds my research. The intimate moment was interrupted by another alert. This one, security warning, flashing red across her console. What now? Dear Rick moved to examine it. Tira's expression turned grim as she read the alert. Security detected an unauthorized access attempt on my personal profile in the guild database. Someone was trying to access my medical records from last night. Medical records. Lumrian medical systems automatically scan and record any significant biological changes. Her eyes met his. Meaningful and intense, including first intimate contact with a non-Larian species. The implications hit Derek immediately. Someone knows about us and they're interested enough to hack secure systems. Not just interested, threatened. Tira's voice hardened. Only 3 factions have the technical capability to attempt such a breach: military intelligence, the Science Directorate, or the Purist Covenant. She said the name with distaste. A political movement dedicated to preserving Lumrian genetic purity. They've opposed integration with other species since we joined the Galactic Confederation. Dear Rick checked his sidearm, a habit from years of military service. So we have a sabotage ship, political scrutiny, and potentially a xenophobic faction targeting us personally. Anything else I should know before we walk out that door? Laura's hand went unconsciously to her abdomen, a gesture so quick Dear Rick almost missed it. Nothing that can't wait until after we've handled the immediate crisis. Something in her tone gave him pause, but another urgent message from Parker demanded his attention. Whatever Tira wasn't telling him would have to wait. Let's go, he said, offering his hand. Apparently I've got a ship to fix, a saboteur to catch, and a promise to defend. All before lunch. Tarara took his hand, her grip firm and reassuring together. Then as they exited her chambers, neither noticed the small drone that detached from the ceiling and followed at a discreet distance its recording. I fixed firmly on the human Lumrian pair. The High Council chamber buzzed with tension as Dear Rick and Tira entered. Unlike the ceremonial atmosphere the previous day, today the room felt like a tribunal. The 7 council members sat stone-faced at their elevated seats while a holographic projection of Admiral Kensington, a stern woman with steel-gray hair, hovered to one side. On the opposite side stood a Lumrian male Derek hadn't seen before, his posture rigid with barely contained hostility. Commander Fry, Lady Thenery's High Counselor. Theron acknowledged them with a nod that lacked his usual warmth. Please take your positions. As they moved to the center of the chamber, Tala whispered, the male is Counselor Valen, leader of the Purist Covenant. His presence here is concerning. Before Derek could respond, Admiral Kensington's hologram flickered. As she spoke, Commander Fry, I understand you've accelerated your involvement with the Lumrian diplomatic process without proper authorization. With respect, Admiral, Derek replied, standing at attention. My personal relationships aren't subject to military authorization. They are when they involve the heir to a strategic alien institution during a sabotage crisis. Kensington countered sharply. Counselor Valen stepped forward, his voice carrying the musical quality of all Lumrian males but edged with contempt. The Admiral raises a valid point. The timing is suspicious at best, treasonous at worst. Treasonous Derek bristled. I failed to see how the human vessel was sabotaged. Violin interrupted, addressing the council rather than Derek. Hours after Commander Fry engaged in forbidden biological contact with our guild heir, the connection is obvious. That's absurd, Tyra interjected. If anything, our union strengthens the alliance. Union Volan's eyes narrowed. So you admit to the physical transgression? High Counselor Theron raised a hand for silence. These accusations are premature. We have no evidence linking Commander Fry to the sabotage. On the contrary, Valen said, activating a holographic display, our security systems recorded an unauthorized transmission from Lady Veneris' chambers to the human vessel shortly before the incident. The display showed a data packet moving from Talara's residence to the horizon. Rick felt the room's collective suspicion shift toward them. That's impossible, Tara said, moving to examine the data. My systems are secured with guild protocols. Perhaps your judgment was compromised, Valen suggested with thinly veiled disgust. Derek stepped forward. If I may, the transmission signature doesn't match standard human or Lumrian protocols. It appears to be using a third-party encryption. Admiral Kensington leaned forward. In her hologram, Commander Fry is correct. This bears the hallmarks of Sigarian mercenary code. Mercenaries? Counselor Mira questioned. Who would employ off-world mercenaries for this? Someone who wanted to frame both humans and Lumrians, Derek suggested. Someone who benefits from discord between our peoples. Violin scoffed. A convenient theory, almost as convenient as your sudden courtship with the one Lumrian who could grant humans access to our stellar navigation secrets. That's enough, Counselor Theon warned, but Valen continued. The real issue isn't just the sabotage, it's the biological contamination of our genetic line. Valen pointed accusingly at Tira, the medical